Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Tribble Timewarp. I am Yuzral and it is the 9th of July, and in this video we're going to be taking the beginnings of a look at the Tholian invasion. This is in the Nukara system. It's a new system in the Eta Eridani block. The first time you go into Eta Eridani, once the patch hits, you'll get a mission prompting you to swing by the system and take a quick look. What it doesn't tell you is that you will need an environment suit, although they do bother to tell you once you're on the planet. Interestingly, there's no way to get an environment suit on the planet without already having an environment suit. So either 100 dilithium in the dilithium store, or the asteroid mining special, or just do the first chunk of Boldly They Road, which takes about 30 seconds. Another interesting point is that the teardrop effect on the Mako warp field is still being abruptly cut off. I'm not sure if that's deliberate, if it was supposed to tail off gradually, or if that's just a visual bug and it's meant to be a complete ovoid. This is the point at which they warn you that you need an environment suit, and they go into some detail as to why. Basically, you will be simultaneously roasted, squashed, corroded, and probably fried into the bargain. Of course, since this is Tribble, we must test it! For science! Seems okay so far. Red numbers. Oh god, the burning! Yeah, it works. Jam on the environment suit, quickly get rid of it. And fortunately I'm a science captain, so I have access to heals. Otherwise this would take some good. Now, there are lots of little bugs in this, and perhaps the most interesting one is what happens if you try to equip a flashlight. Yes, folks, for some reason, pulling out a torch requires you to take your spacesuit off. I have no idea why. I'm not even going to go there. Happily, the triolic pattern enhancer doesn't. But that little flashlight thing, since you can pick it up and keep it in your inventory, is a potential killer if you're not very quick, or if you just didn't have the wit to bind your environment suit toggle to a hotkey. As you can see, I did that. I've got an Alt 5 at the moment. Happily, Tribbles are apparently flame-proof. It seems absolutely nothing can kill a Tribble, except of course poisoned grain. Now there's a transporter pad that will get you to the forward camps, Alpha, Bravo and Charlie. You'll notice they're all colour-coded: green for the solo missions, yellow for the small group stuff, and red for the 5-man plus. Zone-wide solo stuff is purple, and is pretty decent. If the 250 Tholians you're being asked to kill sounds excessive, trust me, by the time you've run through the entire round of exterior and interior quests, you will probably have killed 250 Tholians, and if not, well, hey, we can always go on a little bug squashing spree just to be safe. Yeah, bugs. Hate them. Both kinds. Now then, this is one of the Alpha camp pads. There are several of these dotted around. And that is our first ground Tholian. He's not wearing an environment suit. This is the Tholian's natural habitat, so they don't need it. Now these are the Tholian scanning devices. Tab these for scientific sabotage, and they produce quite generous explosion, and then, yeah. Just how much extraneous hull plating did that thing have? Anyway, tab on. Tholians, standard weapons work pretty well, although you can pick up sonic weapons, or more accurately, standard weapons with the sonic trait that will give them an extra 7.5 damage per shot. If that sounds pitiful, do bear in mind that basically equates to a 15 to 20% increase per shot, depending on what weapon you're using. We'll just keep tabbing along here, hoover up the rest of the science reports as we go. And oh yes, once we've completed that, I did an initial research run through this on Saturday, so some of these quests were already partially done, so there's no more interacting with that. That passage leads down into the 2 to 3 player area. We'll come back to that later. And just fall over. One thing about the Tholians, because of their arachnoid physiology, is that in a nice touch, they love circle strafing. You'll see it when we start engaging these guys in combat. I mean, watch what this chap does. There he goes. Skitter, 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 die. There, even better. So, that's the scientific sabotage and the industrial espionage missions. Basically, kill loads of Tholians, blow up the little scanning devices. They are pretty standard stuff. Bearing in mind that these are dailies, I suspect I'd rather take simple and uncomplicated, because at least then you're reasonably certain it'll work, and indeed this does work properly, which is always good considering this is what we're supposed to be testing for. They've also recycled the dilithium mining game, except you're now mining crystal fragments of some description. The minigame itself works in pretty much the same way. You have 60 seconds, you have to line up the dots in the triangle as before. It's all fairly standard stuff. It's worth noting that I had one version of this mission that required 375 fragments, and one version that required 500. I suspect the version that requires 500 is going to be the one that makes it live, in which case I have to raise the question just how many nodes it's going to require, because I got 35 fragments out of this particular mining run, and if that's a good to average performance, then to get 500 fragments you're going to have to go through 10, 12, you're going to have to go through about 16 or 17 nodes, bearing in mind that you are competing against every other player on the map. And as you can see, we're not exactly blessed with nodes to begin with, so maybe Cryptic need to cut down that number of nodes perhaps to 175, so you have to hit about 5 of the nodes, or else massively up the level of supply, because otherwise it's going to turn into a good old-fashioned claim jumping spree. Now then, I'm going to quickly turn in a few of these, but I need some inventory space first. Can I dump anything? Well, I don't want that palm beacon, so we'll drop the cane in. And don't need small power cells either. Right then, get back to base camp. You can't use the com badge icon, the mission journal, to get hold of this guy. So you have to do it either in person or through these base camps. I'm not sure that's necessarily a good thing, but hey ho. Anyway, this is one of the types of reward you can get, armoured environmental suits. The plus 30.5 resistances are standard across all the environment suits. However, you get bonuses, as you might expect. 1 bonus with green, 2 with blue, 3 with purple, and as you might imagine, easy, medium, hard missions correspond to green, blue and purple rewards, at least in theory. An interesting note about the AI for the Tholians is that it's quite fond of flanking you if it gets the opportunity, and since Tholians can move sideways at some speed, they're very good at it. They also tend to fade out like that if you get a disintegrate, which is odd. I suspect the animation may not have been quite implemented yet. So, let's move on to rescuing red shirts. The Tholians have webbed up various Starfleet and KDF officers. You can see them clustered around. And as your friend, they are quite happy for you to put them through a 20-foot drop. Apparently the suits can take it. And then will stand up with apparently nothing more than a bit of a headache to be asked, "Are you okay?" All it takes is one shot to pop them out, and they will only talk to the person who freed them. So potentially that's a good opportunity for griefing. If you get an officer who is allied to you, they will hand you a stabilizer shutdown code, which comes into play for the closing doors mission, which is also in the zone, or at least it would if it actually worked. Anyway, let us continue on. The Tholians will also occasionally drop the shutdown codes. You'll likely get more of them from friendly officers. Now then, I don't think that's water somehow. I'm certainly not going to swim in it and try to find out. Skipping forward a bit because I need to illustrate a point about the closing doors mission, which basically is that it isn't working at present. Dotted around the medium area are these odd triangular arrangements of Tholian devices. Now, in an earlier build that was on prior to the Sunday, those had what appeared to be interspatial rifts in them. At least they had all the signs. They were blue swirly clouds. Hey, that's the usual recognition for an interspatial rift. It's worked so far. Certainly does for the wormhole. And I still think that fade out effect is a missing disintegration animation. Tholians, when they die, at least the one time we've seen a Tholian die in Mirrored Darkly Part 1, it was a little more spectacular than that. So, overall, a couple of changes. Obviously, that business with the light and the spacesuit not being mutually equipable needs to be fixed. I suspect it may be because the spacesuits themselves incorporate a light source. You can see it on the ground there, but that is pure guesswork on my part, and it's certainly odd for the environment suit status effect and the torch status effect to be non-stackable. That really doesn't make sense to my mind. As I said, it's pure guesswork, but it's because they're both external light sources for the character. Aside that, the only other thing I would note is that I would make it so that once you have broken a KDF or Starfleet officer out of the web, anyone can talk to them. At the moment, if you shoot the web and then just move on, you are essentially, well, I hate to use the word, but it's basically griefing. You're leaving the officer standing there, and okay, as you can see, if I could talk to the guy, it would be fine, but he's locked onto the other chap. In this case, I assume it's completely by accident, and besides, it's Tribble, so it's good testing. It's good testing. Can't be mad. But that does need to be patched up so that if, say, after a minute or so, the original shooter hasn't talked to them, they go free for all, and anyone can say, hey, are you okay? Why are you standing around? Can we break you out? Or better yet, just have them beam out and say, you know what, I'm not hanging around here waiting to be webbed up again. Just as long as we can't have a situation where essentially all of the NPC officers are standing around on the ground and the mission essentially jams up for everybody in that instance of the zone. It'll also be interesting to see if the Tholians get their own transporter effects. At the moment they're using the Starfleet ones. It's not a game breaker by any means, it's more a nice to have, and I'm still not convinced that disintegrate effect is playing as it's meant to. But we shall see. From a plot standpoint, we know what the immediate Tholian practical is, and I'm not going to spoil it here. The mission descriptions make it fairly clear what they're intending. And if you want a spoiler, I suspect I'm not going to be able to avoid giving it away if I cover the interior missions. It's, well, there is a spoiler in there that's about a mile long, to put it mildly. What we don't know yet is what their underlying theoretical is beyond acquire shinies. So it'll be interesting to see where Cryptic take the plotline with this as we progress through Season 6. One final thing I'm going to cover is a couple of the new rewards. Now, obviously we finished a few missions, so first up is one of the green requisition boxes, and you can see that we have got a Sonic Anti-Proton High-Density Beam Rifle with the Sonic and... what's the other one? It's the Crit H modifier. Having a sonic weapon with the sonic modifier strikes me as a touch redundant, and I also have to note, of course, that I've somehow got a blue weapon out of a green box. It may be that that's deliberately one step higher, so rather than green, blue, purple as it is for the armours, it's blue, purple, ultraviolet. For the weapons, we shall see. I'm going to have to rope some volunteers. Not idiots, no, volunteers. For the hard missions, I also have to cover the interior. I'll do those in a separate set of videos. And until then, ladies and gentlemen, that has been the Tribble Timewarp for the 9th of July. I have been Yuzral, and until next time, I bid you farewell.